The time of chaos has come, the legions of Abaddon have spilt into the Imperium, and today we're going to take a look at 5 of the units he's brought along with him that are on the good side, if you can call it that, of their patron gods, and are ones that you will definitely want to consider if you are building a competitive Chaos Space Marine list in 10th edition. As always, this is not in any order of best to worst, it is just 5 datasheets in the Chaos Index that I really like and that I think will serve you well on the battlefield if you are looking to oust the Corpse Emperor from his golden throne. And so without wasting another 10,000 years in the warp, let's get underway. And to begin with, we have a unit which has done very well out of the recent balanced data slate and points changes, the often underwhelming but now genuinely quite scary Warp Talons. These guys have had a very welcome change to their cost, dropping a massive 30 points to now a much nicer 100 points for 5, so 20 points per model, and for that you get a toughness 4, 2 wound, 3 up marine save profile as you would expect, but then also a whopping 12-inch move, deep strike, a 5 up invuln save, and some truly potent anti-infantry weapons with their warp claws. Each Talon gets 4 strength 5, -2 AP, 1 damage attacks with rerolls to wound thanks to twin linked, so they really are very good at clearing chaff squads primarily, but even targets like Marines, which are a bit sturdier, will fall very quickly thanks to that strength 5 and the reroll wounds. And a squad of 10 Talons will kill on average around 8 or so Marine bodies in one round of combat, or they will net you a whopping 20 Orc boys dead in one round of combat, which is actually really good. They also get a sneaky little ability in Warp Flames, which plays around with enemy fallback moves. They force units to take desperate escape tests if they want to retreat, and then they have to do it at -1 to the result if they are battle shocked. So going into squads that want to avoid combat, like Devastators or Desolation squads or other backfield objective holders, is a really great way to leverage these guys. And even if your attacks don't kill them all outright, they might just die when they try to fall back thanks to those desperate escape tests. So I think for 100 points, Warp Talons are now a genuinely great unit to bring for some cheap, killy, backfield harassment units and chaff killers, and I think they can very easily pay for themselves in just a couple of turns. The Possessed are up next and are another unit that got a small but very relevant points drop in the latest update. They went from 145 points to 140 for 5, so it wasn't a huge drop, just 1 point per model, but it does make an already solid unit even more attractive. And with a zippy 9-inch move alongside a toughness 6, 3 wound stat line with a 3 up armor and 5 up invuln, they absolutely can hit combat quickly, and with most of the squad still kicking. They get to take a Chaos icon, which allows them to reroll their leadership for the Dark Pact army rule, which is brilliant and means you will almost never suffer any mortal wounds on them to get those tasty lethal or sustained hits, and either option of the Dark Pact is great on them because in melee they have 4 strength 5, -1 AP, 2 damage attacks each, so they're kind of similar to the Warp Talons, but they're much more of an anti-marine profile rather than anti-chaff. On top of that, they actually get even more from the Dark Pact ability as well, because when they choose a pact, they also get devastating wounds on their weapons. So you can be throwing out from a squad of 5, 20 strength 5, -1 AP, 2 damage attacks with, say, sustained hits 1 and devastating wounds if you wanted, which for a mere 140 points is really quite terrifying. Because yes, devastating wounds did get nerfed for sure, but it's still a very solid buff to have, and it means that 5 Possessed will easily kill 6 or 7 Marines as they charge in, or if you are hunting vehicles with them instead, the lethal hits may be better because that will help you get through their relative weakness of only being strength 5, but I just think for 140 points, much like the Warp Talons, these are a super fast, solidly durable with the 3 wound profile and 5 up invuln, and they are just going to melt through all manner of targets, no matter what you send them into. Up next, we actually have a unit that went up in cost, but is still incredibly good, I think, and funnily enough, given his name, is a very nice pick to go alongside the previous unit of the Possessed. The Master of Possession is now 80 points, up from 70, but he is still absolutely fantastic. Especially if you are bringing another unit along like Possessed, which he can join, and he brings some really solid buffs for them. All by himself though, just individually, he's not too shabby. He's got an 8-inch move, he's toughness 4, he's got 4 wounds, he's got a 3-up armor save and a 5-up invuln, and a range of attacks with his Staff of Possession. It's either 4 strength 6, -1 AP, D3 damage attacks with anti-psycho 2+ in melee, or if you use it at range, it can fire 2 precision shots at 18 inches, which are either strength 4, -3 AP and 2 damage, or strength 6, -3 AP and 3 damage, again with anti-psycho 2+. And so he is just brilliant at sniping out enemy weird boys, warlocks, even Space Marine librarians will go down relatively quickly with those attacks going into them. On top of that, he can also get a buff to his psychic attacks. He can cause a mortal wound to the unit he's with, but then he gets +1 to hit and a +1 to wound with his psychic attacks. So he could very well be hitting and wounding on 2s at -3 AP and then being able to slap up to 6 damage onto an enemy psycho, which in a lot of cases could just flat out kill them in one go. So I think for 80 points, just as his own individual datasheet, he is not too shabby. But then he gets truly brilliant if you attach him to a unit. He can join Legionaries, Chosen, or what I like the most, which is Possessed. And when he joins a unit, his Demonkin rule grants +1 to advance and charge rolls for the unit, already great on a fast moving unit like Possessed, but also on top of that, he gives them a 6-up feel no pain. So those toughness 6, 3 wound, 5-up invuln save Possessed are now going to be even tankier, and a full 10-man intercessor squad unloading into them with Oath of Moment will just about kill one Possessed. And if the Possessed squad aren't Oath of Moment, then that same squad will just do under 2 damage to your squad. So they are going to be really durable with that Master of Possession joining them, and against, you know, that 2 and 3 damage weapons that are quite heavy in the meta at the moment, the Feel No Pain, even 6-up Feel No Pain, will make all the difference, because on a 3 wound model, if you take a 3 damage attack and you just make one of those 6s, you've essentially saved yourself an entire model. So the Master of Possession for 80 points, he is pretty decent just on what he brings in his own datasheet, but bringing him in a unit and comboing him with something like Possessed, he is just fantastic to bring, and I think he will really make that 80 point price tag worthwhile to make your Possessed even faster, even killier, and even more survivable. Next up, we have another character, and this one, yes, I know, maybe it's just because I'm a Dark Angel fan, maybe he isn't as great as I think, but I do actually think he is deceptively solid for his cost, and can actually be a really nice addition to a Chaos list, and so Cypher is making a rare appearance here too. He's a reasonably cheap 105 points, and so for a fairly standard toughness 4 3-up save profile, you might think he's not that amazing, but he does have 5 wounds and a 4-up invuln, so he is actually reasonably durable for that price, and importantly, he is also a lone operative, so he really can survive with the best of them and avoid being shot and just being untargetable a lot of the time until the enemy gets within 12 inches. He does have some semi-decent shooting, although it is admittedly short range, so that does kind of counter his lone operative ability, but he's got 6 strength 4, -1 AP, 1 damage shots from his bolt pistol, and then a further 3 strength 8, -3, 2 damage shots from his plasma pistol. Both of those have sustained hits 1, so he can be getting, possibly, in an absolute best case scenario, 18 hits in total, and with Dark Pact, he can always go for lethal hits because he already has sustained hits on his guns, so it's very unlikely, but he can do a reasonable chunk of damage with his pistols if you are lucky. His main selling points, however, are of course his abilities. Guns Blazing makes him a bit of a Necron Hexmark destroyer. It lets him shoot at an enemy unit if that enemy unit targets a friendly Heretic Astartes unit within 3 inches of Cypher. So of course this is going to be limited by his 12-inch range, but it means that you can threaten the enemy with potentially 9 extra shots that could kill off a few of their infantry if they decide to throw some pot shots into a squad that he's hanging around with. So it's not a bad rule to act as, if nothing else, a bit of a deterrent to your opponent if there's a squad that you don't really want the enemy to be shooting at all that much. His other ability, Agent of Discord, is where I think the majority of his benefit comes in though. This is a really key ability because what it does is it lets you once per battle, after your opponent has used a stratagem, increase its cost by 1 CP for the rest of the game. So things like Armour of Contempt or Unwavering Sentinels or even Overwatch or a command reroll can be made so much harder for your opponent to leverage and use for the rest of the battle. And if it's a stratagem like there are a lot of in the game at the moment that they maybe wanted to use every single turn and benefit from every single turn, this will make it so much harder, in fact 100% harder, for them to take advantage of over the course of the game, and it could quite possibly mean that they physically don't have the CP to use it every single turn like they plan to, which could of course seriously impact their game plan. So for me, this is just a hugely strong rule. I love seeing it on characters, and I think seeing it on Cypher, who is kind of well defended thanks to Lone Operative and also has that very nice cheeky little Hexmark shooting style ability as well, is a really, really nice little package of just mind games for your opponent that you can bring with him. Cypher, for his 105 points, can essentially cost your opponent at least an extra 4 or more command points over the course of the game. So I think for 105 points, he does have some really good value. He's hard to kill. He's potentially a scary threat, especially thanks to his plasma pistol and the reactive shooting. And if nothing else, he is going to be an absolute pain to your opponent's game plans thanks to the Agents of Discord rule. So for me, purely for the mind game tricks he can bring, he is worth bringing to help you gain that advantage over the enemy. Last but by no means least, we switch back to another non-character unit, but this time instead it is a vehicle. Another big drop in the recent Dataslate is that the Hellboot dropped 15 points, going from 155 points down to 140, which is, if nothing else, fairly nice change to its toughness 9, 8 wound, 2 up save stat line, and means you can relatively easily bring a flexible Dreadnought style unit that you can use in almost any situation you need it for. It's got the potential for a more ranged output with the twin las cannon and missile launcher loadout, or more melee focused anti-tank if you go for dual Hellbrute fists, or you could go for a bit of a mix and have a ranged and a melee option, or just go anti-infantry with say a heavy bolter and a power scourge. You really can build this guy to do exactly what you need him to, which makes his sort of flexibility really, really worthwhile. And I think that drop to 140 points really does make that worth bringing in a lot of situations. But what makes the Hellbrute even better is that he's got an ability called the Dark Ascension Aura, and what this does is it gives you a 6-inch bubble where friendly units gain both the sustained hits and lethal hits buff from your army Dark Pact ability. So not only is this great on himself, leveraging even more damage output whether he's at range or in melee, but if he moves up with some Havocs or some Obliterators or even just some Legionaries, he is going to bring them a sizable boost to their firepower, and also for anything that he is joining in melee, you know, whatever that may be, when they get up into combat, he will also be boosting them as well, giving them lethal and sustained hits so they can do as much damage as possible. I think this would be an alright ability if it was just on him, but the fact that it's also a 6-inch aura makes it really, really strong, and it means that you can use the Hellboot as a relatively cheap gun or melee platform, as well as also this great anchor unit to put in between a couple of squads and bring them some really nice buffs as it moves up alongside them. So that is going to be it for the Chaos Space Marines. As always, like in these videos, there is always going to be some other units I could have easily included. I didn't put in Abaddon, I didn't put in Chosen, I didn't put in the Cultist units, all of which are very, very solid. But this is just 5 datasheets and 5 units that I really enjoy and that I think personally can be worked in really quite easily into a competitive chaos list, and they will all bring something that is worthwhile bringing to a strong army list. But as always, I would really love to know what you think of these 5 units and what you would add in your perfect chaos list from the index if you could just choose anything. Let me know your thoughts down in the comments below, and as always, thank you very much for watching. Please do like and subscribe for more Warhammer content from me, but until next time, I'll catch you later, guys.